What is up, Bears fans? Welcome to the Chicago Bears Huddle. This is your take on all things Chicago Bears from the UK. Hands across the pond, guys. Let's build a fan community from the UK to the US, talking all things Bears. We're going to talk running game. We're going to talk about a guy who I believe is letting the Bears down very badly, and that is D'Andre Swift, the feature back for the Bears, the RB1 for the Bears, a guy who is limited at this moment in time in practice, has a quad injury. Some people would argue that he's limited even when he plays due to his massive inefficiency. And, you know, it's not just my personal dislike of the guy, you know, in terms of, I'm not sitting here and hating on him because I don't like him. I'm sitting here and kind of trying to put across how bad he is by using stats and facts, by using the facts on paper about this guy. Now, if you want to establish a play action game, if you want to establish an effective offense, you need an effective running game. And at this moment in time, the Bears running game absolutely stinks. It really is very bad indeed. There are a number of stats which back this up. And, you know, when a running game isn't working, you kind of look at what the root causes of this running game are. Is it the play calling? I don't think so in this occasion. Is it the offensive line? You know, that often gets a lot of the blame. You know, are they not opening holes for the running backs? Are they not, you know, opening those running lanes? Are they not, you know, doing their job when it comes to run blocking? And again, that's not the case. It is down to the running backs. Now, you can't really blame Carmen Ungai. He hasn't had a lot of touches. You can't blame Roschon Johnson. He's hardly featured. It is solely on one man and one man alone, and that is D'Andre Swift. This is an interesting stat which I found the other day, which is the Bears are ranked 1 in run block win rate, but are ranked 32nd in EPA rush. So are ranked the best team in the division in terms of run block win rate, but are ranked dead last in terms of that EPA rush. That is pretty bad. We also lead the league in yards before contact. In terms of yards before contact, Chicago averages 1.89 yards per rush before the running backs take contact. Translation is that the offensive line is doing its job. They are creating holes, they are creating spaces, they are moving bodies. And for me, there is one person and one person alone to blame for this. And that is this man here, D'Andre Swift. He is being given an opportunity by the O-line, by the play calling, to go out there and be a success, to be a top quality running back. But he just does not have the talent to do that. And I don't think anything from his past, bar one season, tells you that he has the talent to do that. I mean, through 2 games, he's got 116 yards on 29 carries, averaging 4 yards per carry, which is not dreadful. He's not great. It's not fantastic. You know, you're looking for 5-6 yards per carry. Not brilliant. 1 explosive run, a 20-yarder against his old team, the Lions. 1 only, and already has 1 fumble. He is the 4th worst amongst qualified backs in terms of run success rate. He is 10th in the league in yards after contact. You know, this isn't just a short-term bad patch for D'Andre Swift. This is something that has gone on now for the last couple of seasons with this guy. You know, Swift isn't creating anything like what I would term an acceptable number of yards per carry. You know, he's got a good situation to work in. You know, he's got a decent opportunity to work in. And historically, he's never really had a massive number, a success of anything above 5. Detroit, he averaged 4.7 yards per carries on limited carries. He averaged 4.6 yards per carry on 229 carries for the Philadelphia Eagles, and he averages 3.8 yards per carry on 253 career carries for the Chicago Bears. In terms of his overall record, like I said, this season, 116 yards, 1 TD. So he's tied 18th in the league on 116 yards. He's tied 72nd at 4 yards per carry. If we go back to last season, sub 1,000 yards, averaging just 3.8 yards per carry, 6 TDs. 253 attempts, 17 games. Back in his decent season back in 2023 with the top class, obviously a top class offensive line and a top class unit in the Eagles. He had over 1,000 yards on 229 attempts, averaging 4.6 yards per carry. You know, this is not a guy who historically has done a good job for any team. This is a guy who has failed on a number of occasions, you know, in terms of that. Now, obviously the impact of us not having this effective running game is quite simple. Sorry about the dog drinking in the background. Play action loses its bite because defenses don't respect it because they know you can't run the ball. Short yardage situations, you can't trust the running back to get those yards over the line for first downs, etc. And Caleb Williams obviously suffers a little bit too because he hasn't got a running back he can depend on. I mean, plus as well, you've got a situation where in the last game, he's guilty of a false start from running back. I mean, Jesus Christ, that's a rookie mistake from a guy who is an experienced veteran. This is a guy who isn't doing his job and isn't doing his job statistically. Like I said, you know, I go back to that statistic there. The Bears are ranked first in run block win rate, 1.89 yards per carry before contact, and ranking 32nd in EPA rush, ranking way down the league in terms of the yards after contact. Now, this is DeAndre Swift. This is on DeAndre Swift. And I don't see anything from this guy's history that means he's going to turn it around. You can have all the clever Ben Johnson plays you want. You can have all the clever schemes you want. You can have all the brilliant Ben Johnson stuff that you want. But, you know, realistically, he isn't going to, I don't think, change rapidly overnight. Now, for me, you've got to be looking at the solution. Now, I don't think at this moment in time you're going to get the Bears going out and trading for a top running back because it's not a top priority in terms of the edge rusher position looks weak. The cornerback room is awful at the moment. There's a number of other more pressing concerns, and the defense has proved a lot more pressing concern going forward. And yes, this is a concern, but not the most pressing concern. Yes, there are street free agents that you could perhaps go out. Jamal Williams, obviously still without a team. Someone like him. But, you know, maybe we need to look within the organisation. You know, maybe someone like Carmen Ungai needs to get more of an opportunity going forward. You know, Carmen Ungai this season has not had a great deal of work. Yet he is a guy who is, yes, his pass blocking is not great. He's certainly not got that skill. And I'm not saying for a minute that DeAndre Swift's pass blocking is absolutely outstanding. But, you know, this is a guy who, I honestly think that could come in and with a few more touches, with a few more plays called for him, could do a little bit better. You know, he's averaging 4 yards per carry like DeAndre Swift. He's only had 7 carries, 28 yards, no TDs in his short time in the NFL. But this is a guy who's a lot bigger, a lot more physical bigger, a lot more like a bowling ball, a guy who I think, can do those hard yards. And one of the things that you always notice with DeAndre Swift is he's not prepared to go up the middle. He's a guy who's always trying to bounce to the outside, trying to hit that home run ball and doesn't do it. So, I would look to sort of try and get Carmen Ungai a lot more involved in the offense this week. Perhaps even parcel up some trick plays as well. Luther Burden coming out of the backfield in a Deebo Samuel kind of way. Something like that I think could be effective because what DeAndre Swift is doing and what we're seeing from DeAndre Swift certainly is nowhere near effective enough. This is a fundamental part, and this is something the Bears need to get right if we're going to move forward. Now, the offense for me is making steps forward. Caleb is progressing. A lot better than a lot of people give him credit for. The wide receivers, Roma Dunze is having an excellent year. I think, Olmai Zacchaeus is doing very well as well. I think if we get Loveland and Burden more involved, the offense can become even more effective. Some parts of the offensive line are working well. Joe Tooney is working well, for example. So we are making strides forward with this offense. And, this weekend will be the perfect test of it against a very poor Dallas team. But for me, the running game needs to improve, and we need to take DeAndre Swift out of it a little bit more and use Munungai more, use Roschon Johnson a little bit more, because DeAndre Swift, certainly for me, isn't cutting the mustard, and stats tell us that, and that's something that must be addressed by Ben and the rest of the Bears coaching staff. Guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments on DeAndre Swift and the Bears running attack. If you've enjoyed the content, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Catch you soon, Chicago. Bear down.